"Don't waste our time, Miss Chun." Colonel Williams pointed his finger directly at the small woman standing behind the reception desk. "You're just a secretary. Step away from those controls." She didn't respond. Just reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a small black device with flashing red lights. The control room went completely silent. An elderly general standing in the corner stepped forward, his face pale. "Wait, that's a Raptor command module. Those were classified above. Top secret." Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Sarah Chun was 31 years old and had been working as the administrative secretary at Falcon Ridge Strategic Command Center for almost 4 years. Located deep in the Colorado mountains, this wasn't just any military installation. It was the nerve center for the most advanced fighter aircraft operations in the entire Western Hemisphere. Every morning at exactly 7:15, she would arrive carrying her worn leather briefcase and steaming coffee mug, settle behind her modest desk in the main operations center, and begin her daily routine of answering phones, filing reports, and scheduling meetings for officers who barely acknowledged her existence. Her workspace was positioned strategically in the corner of the massive operations floor, surrounded by towering computer screens displaying real-time satellite feeds, weather patterns, and aircraft tracking systems. Fighter jets worth hundreds of millions of dollars were coordinated from this room, their missions planned and executed by some of the most decorated pilots and tactical officers in the United States Air Force. Sarah sat quietly among all this sophisticated military technology, wearing simple business attire and wire-rimmed glasses, appearing completely out of place among the uniformed personnel who dominated the facility. The pilots and officers treated her with polite indifference. At best, casual dismissal at worst. During their morning briefings, they would speak over her as if she were invisible, discussing classified flight operations and strategic maneuvers, while she organized their paperwork and managed their calendars. Major Thompson, a decorated F-22 Raptor pilot with multiple combat deployments, often made jokes about civilian personnel who worked around military aircraft without understanding their complexity. "Secretary thinks she knows about flying because she schedules our flight times," he would say during coffee breaks, causing other officers to chuckle while shaking their heads in amusement. Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez, the base operations commander, frequently assigned Sarah additional duties that seemed designed to keep her busy and out of important conversations. She would spend hours transcribing mission reports, updating personnel files, and coordinating travel arrangements for visiting dignitaries who came to observe training exercises. Her technical knowledge and attention to detail were consistently overlooked by supervisors who saw her only as administrative support, useful for handling mundane tasks, but certainly not qualified to understand the sophisticated military operations happening around her every single day. What none of them knew was that Sarah possessed an almost photographic memory for technical specifications and military procedures. While organizing flight manuals and maintenance reports, she had quietly absorbed information about aircraft systems, combat protocols, and tactical strategies that most officers spent years learning in specialized training programs. She could recite engine specifications for every aircraft on the base, explain complex radar systems in precise detail, and identify potential mechanical problems from subtle variations in routine maintenance logs that experienced technicians often missed completely. Her supervisor, Chief Administrative Officer Captain Martinez, occasionally wondered why someone with Sarah's obvious intelligence and organizational skills had chosen to work in such a routine clerical position. "Chun, you're clearly capable of handling more responsibility," he would say during her annual performance reviews. "Have you considered applying for officer candidate school or transferring to a position that better utilizes your administrative talents?" Sarah would always give the same mysterious response. I'm exactly where I need to be right now, Captain. Sometimes the best view of operations comes from the outside looking in. The base operated on a strict hierarchy where rank determined access to information and decision-making authority. Pilots were treated like royalty, their every need anticipated and accommodated by support staff who understood that these elite aviators carried the responsibility for multi-million-dollar aircraft and potentially life-or-death missions. Engineers and technicians occupied the middle tier, respected for their specialized knowledge, but clearly subordinate to the flying officers who actually took the sophisticated machines into combat situations. Administrative personnel like Sarah existed at the bottom of this carefully structured pyramid, essential for daily operations, but excluded from any meaningful participation in strategic planning or tactical discussions. She attended meetings only to take notes, participated in briefings only to distribute documents, and interacted with aircraft only to schedule their maintenance appointments. Her opinions were never solicited, her insights never considered, and her presence generally taken for granted by military personnel, who assumed that civilian secretaries lacked the training and expertise necessary to contribute meaningfully to complex aerospace operations. During lunch breaks, Sarah would often sit alone in the base cafeteria, listening to pilots discuss their training exercises and combat simulations. They would debate the merits of different tactical approaches, analyze the performance characteristics of various aircraft configurations, and share stories about challenging flight conditions they had encountered during their careers. She absorbed every word, mentally cataloging information about aircraft capabilities, weather factors, and strategic considerations that could prove crucial in emergency situations, though no one suspected that the quiet secretary possessed such detailed knowledge about military aviation that the younger officers sometimes made condescending remarks about civilian workers who spent their careers around military aircraft without ever experiencing the thrill and danger of actual flight operations. "Must be nice to have a safe desk job," Captain Harrison would say while reviewing flight schedules that Sarah had prepared. "No pressure, no risk, no real responsibility for anything important." These comments stung, but Sarah never responded defensively or tried to correct their assumptions about her background and qualifications. Instead, she continued performing her duties with meticulous precision, arriving early and staying late to ensure that every document was properly filed. Every communication was accurately transcribed, and every detail of the complex scheduling matrix was perfectly coordinated. Her work was flawless, but invisible. Her contributions were essential, but unrecognized. Her potential was extraordinary, but completely hidden beneath the mundane routine of administrative responsibilities that kept the base running smoothly while others received credit for its operational success. Late at night, when the base was quiet and most personnel had returned to their quarters, Sarah would sometimes remain at her desk, supposedly catching up on paperwork but actually studying technical manuals and tactical guides that had been left behind by officers who assumed that classified documents were safe around someone who was just a secretary. She memorized aircraft specifications, weapon systems capabilities, and emergency procedures with the same attention to detail that she applied to scheduling meetings and organizing travel arrangements. The irony was that Sarah probably knew more about the day-to-day operations of Falcon Ridge than many of the officers who commanded it. She understood the personality quirks of individual pilots, the maintenance histories of specific aircraft, and the complex web of relationships and responsibilities that kept the base functioning at peak efficiency. But this knowledge remained invisible to everyone around her, hidden behind her unassuming appearance and seemingly routine administrative role. The dismissive culture at Falcon Ridge Strategic Command Center wasn't just casual indifference. It was a systematic pattern of exclusion that had developed over decades of military tradition. During morning briefings, high-ranking officers would discuss classified mission parameters, while Sarah sat in the corner taking notes. But they spoke about her as if she weren't present in the room. Make sure the secretary gets those flight schedules typed up properly, Major Davidson would announce to his subordinates, never bothering to address Sarah directly or acknowledge that she had been managing complex scheduling matrices flawlessly for nearly 4 years. The weekly staff meetings were particularly brutal exercises in professional invisibility. Colonel Peterson, the base commander, would review operational readiness reports and strategic planning initiatives, while Sarah distributed printed materials and refreshed coffee cups for the assembled officers. When technical questions arose about aircraft maintenance schedules or personnel availability, the officers would debate among themselves rather than consulting the person who actually managed those systems on a daily basis. Someone should check with administration about pilot rotation schedules, they would say, completely ignoring the fact that Sarah had designed and maintained those rotation schedules for months. Captain Morrison, a young F-22 pilot fresh from advanced training, seemed to take particular pleasure in making condescending remarks about civilian support staff. "It's amazing how complicated some people think our job is," he would say during informal conversations in the operations center. "They see all these computer screens and technical manuals and assume there's some kind of rocket science involved. Reality is, you either have the right stuff for flying or you don't. Some people are meant to stay on the ground handling paperwork." His comments always drew chuckles from other pilots who enjoyed feeling superior to the administrative personnel who supported their missions. The base's social hierarchy extended beyond professional interactions into every aspect of daily life. The officers' club was strictly off-limits to civilian employees, creating a clear separation between those who flew aircraft and those who merely supported flight operations. Sarah would eat lunch alone in the general cafeteria while pilots gathered at exclusive tables discussing classified missions and advanced tactical procedures. She could hear fragments of their conversations about combat scenarios, weapons systems capabilities, and strategic planning initiatives, but she was expected to ignore these discussions and focus on her administrative responsibilities. During training exercises, Sarah's role was limited to answering phones and updating status boards, while the real action happened on the flight line and in the control tower. Officers would rush past her desk carrying flight helmets and tactical gear, heading out to participate in sophisticated combat simulations that tested their skills against hypothetical enemy threats. She watched through the operations center windows as multi-million-dollar fighter jets took off and landed, performing complex maneuvers that required years of specialized training and split-second decision-making under extreme pressure, while she remained trapped behind her desk managing routine correspondence and filing reports. The technology gap was another source of systematic exclusion. Sarah's computer terminal had limited access to basic administrative functions, like scheduling software and personnel databases, but she was locked out of the advanced tactical systems that displayed real-time aircraft positions, weather data, and mission parameters. Officers would gather around sophisticated computer workstations, discussing target acquisition systems, electronic warfare capabilities, and defensive countermeasures, while Sarah worked on a basic desktop computer that couldn't even access the same network servers they used for operational planning. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, the Chief of Staff, often assigned Sarah additional administrative burdens that seemed designed to keep her too busy to pay attention to important military discussions happening around her. She would spend entire afternoons transcribing audio recordings of mission debriefings, typing up detailed reports about training exercise outcomes and pilot performance evaluations. These assignments were presented as recognition of her typing skills and attention to detail, but they effectively excluded her from participating in any meaningful way in the strategic planning processes that shaped the base's operational priorities. Most frustrating aspect of this systematic dismissal was how it extended to her obvious technical competence. When officers encountered problems with their computer systems or struggled to understand complex scheduling requirements, they would call the Information Technology Department rather than asking Sarah for assistance, despite the fact that she had been troubleshooting those same systems for years. She had developed workarounds for software glitches, created backup procedures for data management, and streamlined processes that saved hours of administrative time. But her innovations were either ignored or credited to other personnel who held higher positions in the military hierarchy. Major Williams, the operations officer, frequently made jokes about civilian employees who worked around advanced military technology without understanding its complexity. "Secretary probably thinks those F-22s run on regular gasoline," he would say during coffee breaks, causing other officers to laugh while shaking their heads in amusement. That she couldn't tell the difference between a targeting computer and a weather radar if her life depended on it. These comments revealed a fundamental assumption that civilian administrative staff lacked the intelligence and training necessary to comprehend sophisticated aerospace systems. The gender dynamics added another layer of dismissive behavior that Sarah encountered daily. Male officers would explain basic office procedures to her in condescending tones, assuming that she needed guidance on tasks she had been performing expertly for years. Captain Rodriguez would slowly walk her through simple filing systems as if she were a new employee, speaking in the patient voice that adults use when instructing children. "Now, Sarah, make sure you put the classified documents in the secured cabinet," he would say, despite the fact that she had been handling classified materials without incident since her first day on the job. Even her attempts to contribute valuable insights were systematically dismissed by officers who couldn't imagine that a secretary might possess relevant knowledge about military operations. During one staff meeting, Sarah quietly mentioned that she had noticed patterns in aircraft maintenance schedules that could be optimized to improve operational readiness. Colonel Peterson smiled politely and said, "That's very observant, Miss Chun, but aircraft maintenance involves complex technical considerations that require specialized training to understand fully." He then turned to Major Thompson and asked for his opinion on the same scheduling issues that Sarah had tried to address. The exclusion extended to professional development opportunities that might have allowed Sarah to demonstrate her capabilities in a more visible role. When the base offered training programs for administrative personnel, Sarah was automatically enrolled in basic courses covering filing systems and correspondence management, while more advanced technical training was reserved exclusively for military personnel. She requested permission to attend seminars on aerospace systems management and strategic planning, but these requests were denied with explanations that such training was unnecessary for civilian support staff. Sarah's suggestions for improving operational efficiency were routinely ignored or credited to military personnel who presented similar ideas during official meetings. She had developed innovative solutions for coordinating complex flight schedules, managing maintenance logistics, and streamlining communication protocols. But these contributions remained invisible to officers who assumed that meaningful innovations could only come from trained military professionals with appropriate security clearances and technical backgrounds. The psychological impact of this constant dismissal was cumulative and deliberate. Sarah was expected to remain grateful for her position while accepting that she would never be considered qualified for more responsible roles, regardless of her demonstrated competence and obvious intelligence. She was supposed to find satisfaction in supporting important military operations while acknowledging that she would never be trusted to participate meaningfully in those operations herself. The emergency alarm pierced through the afternoon quiet of Falcon Ridge Strategic Command Center at exactly 1400 hours on a Tuesday that had started like any other routine day. Sarah was updating pilot rotation schedules when the piercing wail of the base-wide alert system echoed through the operations center. followed immediately by flashing red warning lights that bathed the entire facility in an ominous crimson glow. Officers dropped their coffee cups and rushed to their emergency stations while Sarah instinctively reached for the Emergency Communication Protocols manual that she kept in her desk drawer. Major General Patricia Hawkins, the Regional Air Defense Commander, burst through the Operations Center doors with her aide-de-camp trailing behind her, both wearing expressions of barely controlled panic. "We have a situation developing over the Pacific Northwest," she announced to the assembled personnel, her voice cutting through the controlled chaos of officers scrambling to their emergency positions. "Unidentified aircraft approaching restricted airspace at extremely high velocity. Standard identification protocols have failed completely. We need immediate tactical response capability." The main display screens throughout the operations center flickered to life, showing real-time radar tracking data that painted a terrifying picture of the emerging crisis. Multiple unknown contacts were approaching from the northwest at speeds that exceeded anything in known aircraft database, following flight patterns that suggested either advanced foreign military technology or something far more sophisticated than conventional aerospace engineering. The blips on the radar screen moved with precision and coordination that indicated intelligent control rather than natural phenomena or equipment malfunction. Colonel Williams, the Tactical Operations Commander, stepped forward to brief the assembled personnel on the gravity of the situation they were facing. "These contacts first appeared on our long-range detection systems approximately 37 minutes ago," he explained while pointing to the tracking data displayed on the massive wall screens. "Initial analysis suggested equipment malfunction, but multiple independent radar installations have confirmed identical readings. The objects are maintaining formation while approaching critical defense perimeters at velocities that should be physically impossible for any known aircraft design." Captain Rodriguez, the base's senior F-22 Raptor pilot, immediately volunteered to lead an intercept mission, but his enthusiasm was quickly dampened by the technical briefing that followed. "Sir, our standard intercept procedures assume conventional aircraft operating within normal performance parameters," he admitted after reviewing the tracking data more carefully. "These contacts are demonstrating flight characteristics that exceed our tactical response capabilities. They're moving too fast and maneuvering too precisely for standard engagement protocols." The situation became more desperate as additional information arrived from regional defense networks throughout the western United States. Similar unidentified contacts had been detected approaching military installations in Washington, Oregon, and Northern California, all following coordinated flight paths that suggested a systematic probing of American air defense capabilities. The timing and precision of these incursions indicated advanced intelligence gathering rather than random intrusions into restricted airspace. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes attempted to contact higher command authorities for guidance, but communication systems were experiencing unprecedented interference that prevented clear transmission of critical tactical information. "All our secure communication channels are being jammed by some kind of sophisticated electronic warfare system," he reported to General Hawkins with obvious frustration. "We're effectively isolated from regional command structure just when we need coordination most desperately." Major Thompson, the most experienced combat pilot on the base, studied the radar displays with growing concern about their limited response options. "These contacts are operating in ways that violate basic principles of aerodynamics as we understand them," he observed while analyzing the flight pattern data. "They're making 90-degree turns at velocities that should tear apart any conventional aircraft structure. Our intercept capabilities are designed for engaging known threats operating within predictable performance parameters." The crisis deepened when long-range sensors detected that the unidentified contacts were carrying what appeared to be advanced electronic surveillance equipment capable of penetrating military communication networks and defensive systems. "They're not just observing our installations, warned Captain Morrison after reviewing the electronic intelligence data. They're actively mapping our defensive capabilities and communication protocols. This represents a direct threat to national security. That requires immediate response. General Hawkins faced an impossible decision with potentially catastrophic consequences, regardless of which course of action she chose. Launching conventional fighter aircraft against unknown contacts with superior performance capabilities could result in the loss of expensive military assets and highly trained pilots. However, allowing unidentified aircraft to continue penetrating restricted airspace while gathering intelligence about American defense systems was equally unacceptable from a strategic security perspective. The base's most advanced F-22 Raptor aircraft were immediately prepared for emergency deployment, but even these sophisticated fighter jets seemed inadequate for engaging threats that operated beyond conventional aerospace limitations. Our Raptors represent the pinnacle of current fighter technology, acknowledged Major Williams while reviewing aircraft readiness reports. But they're designed to engage conventional threats using established tactical doctrines. We're facing something that requires capabilities we don't currently possess. Sarah continued working at her desk throughout the developing crisis, maintaining communication logs and updating status reports, while the military personnel focused on tactical response planning. She listened carefully to every briefing, absorbed every piece of technical information, and mentally cataloged the growing list of problems that conventional military procedures seemed unable to address effectively. Her administrative training had taught her to remain calm during emergency situations, but her hidden knowledge allowed her to understand the true severity of the threat they were facing. The electronic warfare interference intensified as the unidentified contacts moved closer to critical military installations, disrupting not only communication systems, but also navigation equipment and targeting computers essential for defensive operations. "We're being systematically blinded," reported the base's electronic warfare specialist. "Whatever technology they're using is more advanced than anything in our current defensive arsenal." As the crisis escalated beyond conventional response capabilities, it became clear that standard military procedures and traditional aircraft might be insufficient for addressing this unprecedented threat to national security. The unidentified contacts continued their methodical approach toward restricted airspace, demonstrating technological superiority that challenged fundamental assumptions about American air defense capabilities and strategic planning. Time was running out for developing an effective response to threats that operated beyond conventional military understanding. The base's most experienced officers found themselves confronting limitations in their training and equipment that left them vulnerable to adversaries who possessed technological advantages they had never encountered before. Standard tactical doctrines seemed inadequate for engaging enemies who could violate basic principles of physics and aerospace engineering. General Hawkins realized that conventional solutions might prove insufficient for protecting critical military assets and strategic installations from adversaries who possessed technological capabilities that exceeded current American defensive systems. The approaching crisis would require innovative thinking and unconventional approaches that went beyond traditional military training and established procedures for engaging known threats in familiar tactical environments. The tension in the operations center reached a breaking point as General Hawkins surveyed her limited options with growing desperation. Every conventional tactical solution had been analyzed and found inadequate for addressing threats that operated beyond known aerospace capabilities. The unidentified contacts continued their relentless approach toward critical defense installations while jamming systems prevented coordination with regional command authorities, who might provide additional resources or strategic guidance for this unprecedented crisis situation. Major Thompson stepped forward with a proposal that reflected the gravity of their desperate circumstances. General, we could attempt a coordinated intercept using all available F-22 assets simultaneously, he suggested while pointing to tactical deployment options displayed on the main strategic planning screens. Multiple aircraft approaching from different vectors might overwhelm their defensive capabilities, assuming they're using technology we can understand and counter effectively. Colonel Williams immediately identified the fatal flaw in this conventional approach to an unconventional threat. Major, our radar analysis indicates these contacts can outmaneuver anything in our current inventory, he replied grimly while reviewing performance data that painted an increasingly hopeless picture. Sending our pilots against superior technology without understanding their capabilities is essentially ordering them into a suicide mission that serves no strategic purpose. Captain Rodriguez offered an alternative strategy based on defensive positioning rather than aggressive intercept tactics. We could establish a protective perimeter around critical installations and wait for the contacts to reveal their intentions, he proposed while studying geographical layouts of regional military facilities. This approach minimizes risk to our aircraft while maintaining defensive readiness for protecting essential strategic assets. General Hawkins rejected this passive strategy immediately, understanding that defensive positioning would allow the intruders to complete their intelligence-gathering mission without interference. Captain, these contacts are systematically mapping our defensive capabilities, she explained with obvious frustration. Allowing them to continue surveillance operations while we maintain defensive positions essentially hands them complete intelligence about our strategic vulnerabilities and tactical limitations. The electronic warfare specialist provided increasingly alarming updates about the sophisticated jamming systems that were crippling their communication and coordination capabilities. General, the interference patterns suggest technology that's decades ahead of our current electronic warfare capabilities, he reported while analyzing signal intercept data. They're not just blocking our communications. They're actively penetrating our secure networks and downloading classified tactical information. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes attempted to contact neighboring air defense installations for mutual support, but discovered that similar crises were developing simultaneously across multiple military facilities throughout the western United States. Ma'am, we're receiving fragmentary reports of identical situations at several other strategic installations, he informed General Hawkins while struggling with compromised communication systems. This appears to be a coordinated intelligence-gathering operation targeting our entire regional defense network. The radar displays showed the unidentified contacts adjusting their flight patterns in response to defensive preparations being made at Falcon Ridge, demonstrating real-time intelligence capabilities that suggested active monitoring of military communications and tactical planning discussions. They know exactly what we're planning before we can implement any response strategies, observed Major Williams with growing alarm. Our tactical communications are completely compromised by whatever surveillance technology they're employing. Sarah had been listening intently to every tactical discussion while maintaining her administrative duties, absorbing technical details about aircraft capabilities, electronic warfare systems, and strategic limitations that the military personnel were struggling to address effectively. Her position in the corner of the operations center provided an excellent vantage point for observing the developing crisis without attracting attention from officers who were focused on more pressing tactical concerns. Captain Morrison attempted to coordinate with the base's missile defense systems, but discovered that the sophisticated jamming was affecting targeting computers and guidance systems essential for engaging fast-moving aerial targets. Sir, our surface-to-air missile batteries are experiencing system failures that prevent accurate target acquisition, he reported with obvious frustration. The electronic interference is more comprehensive than anything we've encountered in training exercises or previous operational deployments. The crisis reached a critical point when General Hawkins realized that Conventional military responses were proving completely inadequate for addressing threats that operated beyond the parameters of traditional tactical planning and established defense doctrines. "We need solutions that go beyond conventional thinking," she announced to the assembled personnel with desperate urgency. "Standard procedures and traditional tactics are insufficient for engaging adversaries who possess technological advantages we don't understand." Major Thompson made one final attempt to propose a workable conventional solution based on overwhelming force rather than sophisticated tactics. "General, we could launch every available aircraft simultaneously and attempt to saturate their defensive capabilities through sheer numbers," he suggested while reviewing the base's complete inventory of tactical aircraft. "Even superior technology might be overwhelmed by coordinated attacks from multiple directions using different approach vectors." Colonel Williams immediately recognized the catastrophic potential of this desperate strategy. "Major, that approach would risk our entire tactical air capability on a single engagement with unknown probability of success," he responded while analyzing the tactical mathematics of such an operation. "If we lose our aircraft in a failed intercept attempt, we'll have no remaining defensive capability for protecting critical installations from future attacks." The unidentified contacts demonstrated their superior capabilities by performing impossible maneuvers that violated basic principles of physics and aerospace engineering, including instantaneous direction changes at extreme velocities and vertical climbing patterns that exceeded the thrust-to-weight ratios of any known propulsion system. "They're not operating within conventional aerospace limitations," observed the base's chief engineer with scientific fascination mixed with strategic alarm. Sarah quietly stood up from her desk and walked across the operations center toward the main tactical planning station where General Hawkins was consulting with her senior officers about increasingly desperate response options. Her movement was subtle and unobtrusive, but she carried herself with quiet confidence that seemed inconsistent with her administrative role and civilian status within the military hierarchy. The assembled officers were too focused on their tactical discussions to notice Sarah's approach until she spoke in a clear, calm voice that cut through their increasingly frantic planning session. "General Hawkins, I believe I can address this situation effectively," she said with quiet authority that seemed to come from deep professional experience rather than administrative training. The operations center fell into stunned silence as every officer turned to stare at the secretary, who had just volunteered to solve a crisis that had overwhelmed their combined military expertise and technological capabilities. The operations center erupted in nervous laughter that echoed off the reinforced concrete walls as officers exchanged incredulous glances at the secretary's audacious offer. Major Thompson was the first to vocalize what everyone was thinking, his voice dripping with condescension and disbelief. "Miss Chun, this is a national security crisis requiring advanced tactical knowledge and classified clearance levels far beyond civilian administrative capabilities," he said while shaking his head in obvious amusement at what he perceived as naive overconfidence. Colonel Williams stepped forward with barely controlled irritation, clearly frustrated that their urgent tactical planning session had been interrupted by someone he considered completely unqualified to contribute meaningful solutions. "Sarah, we appreciate your willingness to help, but this situation requires military expertise and access to classified systems that civilian personnel simply don't possess," he explained in the patient tone typically reserved for explaining complex concepts to children or inexperienced subordinates. General Hawkins initially dismissed Sarah's offer with polite but firm rejection. Her attention focused on the radar displays, showing the unidentified contacts continuing their relentless approach toward critical defense installations. "Miss Chun, I'm sure you mean well, but we need tactical solutions from trained military professionals who understand advanced aerospace systems and electronic warfare capabilities," she said without looking away from the increasingly desperate Situation developing on the main tactical screens. Captain Rodriguez joined the chorus of dismissive voices, unable to conceive that administrative support staff could possess knowledge relevant to sophisticated military operations. Ma'am, with all due respect, this crisis involves technology and tactics that require years of specialized training to understand, he said while pointing to the complex technical displays that filled the operations center. Civilian personnel lack the security clearances and technical background necessary for accessing the systems we need to address this threat. But Sarah didn't retreat to her desk or apologize for the interruption as the officers expected. Instead, she reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small black device that immediately captured everyone's attention through its obviously military design and sophisticated electronic components. The device was approximately the size of a smartphone, but featured a ruggedized case with military specifications, multiple indicator lights, and an interface that none of the assembled officers recognized despite their extensive experience with classified military technology. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes stepped closer to examine the mysterious device, his expression shifting from amusement to growing concern as he noticed details that suggested advanced military origins. "Miss Chun, where exactly did you acquire that equipment?" he asked with professional wariness, recognizing that civilian administrative personnel should not possess military hardware of any kind, particularly devices with classification markings that indicated restricted access requirements. The device displayed a complex holographic interface when Sarah activated it using biometric authentication that required both fingerprint and retinal scanning, security measures that exceeded anything used for standard military equipment at Falcon Ridge. The holographic display showed real-time tactical data about the approaching unidentified contacts, including detailed technical specifications, flight pattern analysis, and countermeasure recommendations that went far beyond the information available through conventional radar and tracking systems. Major Williams stared at the holographic readouts with growing amazement and confusion, unable to understand how a civilian secretary possessed access to intelligence data that surpassed their most sophisticated military surveillance capabilities. "Those are real-time tactical assessments of the unidentified contacts," he observed with obvious bewilderment. "How is civilian equipment providing more detailed intelligence than our classified military systems?" Sarah's fingers moved across the device's holographic interface with practiced precision that indicated extensive familiarity with its complex operational procedures. She accessed multiple layers of classified data, including electronic warfare analysis, propulsion system specifications, and tactical vulnerability assessments that revealed comprehensive understanding of the threats they were facing. Her technical competence was immediately obvious to experienced military personnel who recognized expertise when they encountered it. General Hawkins stepped forward for a closer examination of the device and its displays, her expression shifting from skeptical dismissal to intense professional interest as she recognized the quality and sophistication of the intelligence data Sarah was accessing. "Miss Chun, that device is displaying classified tactical information at clearance levels that exceed most personnel on this base," she observed with growing confusion about how administrative support staff had obtained such advanced military technology. The holographic display showed detailed schematics of the unidentified contacts, including their propulsion systems, electronic warfare capabilities, and defensive countermeasures that conventional military sensors had been unable to penetrate or analyze effectively. Sarah manipulated the interface to highlight specific technical vulnerabilities that could be exploited using precisely coordinated tactical approaches that required intimate knowledge of both conventional and unconventional aerospace engineering principles. Captain Morrison examined the technical readouts with professional fascination, recognizing that the intelligence data exceeded anything he had encountered during his extensive military career. "Ma'am, These specifications show propulsion technology that's decades ahead of anything in our current aerospace database. He reported to General Hawkins while studying the detailed engineering schematics. But they also reveal exploitable weaknesses that conventional tactical analysis missed completely. Colonel Williams demanded immediate explanations about how civilian personnel had obtained access to military technology that exceeded the classification levels of equipment available to senior officers. Miss Chun, that device requires security clearances and authentication protocols that are simply not available to administrative support staff. He insisted while pointing to the obviously sophisticated military hardware. Where exactly did you acquire equipment with capabilities that exceed our standard tactical systems? Sarah looked directly at General Hawkins, with quiet confidence that seemed to emerge from deep professional experience rather than administrative training. "General, the device belongs to me because I'm qualified to use it," she said calmly while continuing to manipulate the holographic interface with expert precision. "Just as I'm qualified to address the tactical situation that conventional military procedures have proven unable to handle effectively." The assembled officers exchanged increasingly confused glances as they struggled to reconcile their assumptions about civilian administrative personnel with the obvious technical expertise Sarah was demonstrating through her manipulation of advanced military technology that none of them had ever encountered before. The tension in the operations center reached its breaking point as Sarah made a decision that would reveal everything she had kept hidden for nearly 4 years. She rolled up her left sleeve with deliberate precision, exposing her forearm to the assembled officers who watched with growing confusion and anticipation. A distinctive tattoo appeared on her pale skin, unlike anything they had seen in standard military insignia, databases, or conventional service documentation. The tattoo was intricate and obviously military in origin, featuring 3 overlapping diamond shapes arranged in a triangular formation, with a stylized lightning bolt cutting diagonally through the center. The design incorporated elements that suggested advanced aerospace technology, with small technical details that resembled circuit patterns and geometric configurations found in classified engineering schematics. The metallic ink appeared to shift color slightly under the fluorescent lighting, creating an almost holographic effect that indicated specialized materials and application techniques. General Hawkins stepped closer to examine the tattoo more carefully, her expression shifting from confusion to recognition as decades of military experience helped her identify the distinctive markings. "That's not standard military insignia," she observed with growing professional interest while studying the complex geometric patterns. "The design elements suggest special operations classification, but I've never encountered those specific symbols in any official documentation or personnel records." An elderly colonel named Patterson emerged from the background where he had been quietly observing the developing situation. His weathered face went pale as he recognized design elements that triggered memories from classified briefings conducted years earlier under maximum security protocols. "Wait," he said slowly, his voice trembling with the weight of sudden recognition. "I've seen those symbols before, but only in briefings classified above top secret with restricted access requirements." Colonel Patterson stepped closer to examine Sarah's tattoo with the careful attention of someone trying to confirm details from classified memories that he wasn't supposed to discuss openly. "Those diamond configurations and the lightning bolt pattern," he continued with obvious uncertainty about how much classified information he could reveal. "They belonged to Phantom Wing, didn't they? But that program was officially terminated 8 years ago after some kind of catastrophic incident that sealed all records permanently." The assembled officers had never heard of Phantom Wing, but Patterson's reaction indicated that Sarah's tattoo represented something far more significant than conventional military service. Major Thompson demanded immediate clarification about programs that apparently operated beyond standard military documentation and personnel tracking systems. "Colonel, what exactly was Phantom Wing, and why don't any of us have access to information about its operations or personnel assignments?" Patterson's hands trembled slightly as he struggled with security protocols that prohibited discussion of classified programs, even years after their official termination. "Phantom Wing wasn't just another special operations unit," he explained, carefully while choosing his words to avoid revealing information that remained classified. "It was an experimental program designed to identify and train pilots capable of operating technology that was decades ahead of conventional aerospace engineering and tactical doctrine." Sarah continued working with her mysterious device while the officers debated her background and qualifications, accessing layers of tactical data that revealed comprehensive understanding of the threats they were facing. Her technical competence was becoming impossible to ignore or dismiss, as the holographic displays provided increasingly sophisticated analysis of the unidentified contacts and their advanced capabilities. General Hawkins demanded immediate access to any available records about Phantom Wing and its personnel, but discovered that conventional military databases contained no references to the program or its operations. "Colonel Patterson, if Phantom Wing was a legitimate military program, there should be documentation in our classified archives," she insisted, while attempting to access secure personnel databases. "How is it possible that an entire special operations unit operated without leaving any trace in official records?" Patterson explained that Phantom Wing had operated under classification levels that exceeded standard military security protocols, with all documentation maintained in separate archives. That required special authorization codes and biometric authentication systems. The program was designed to remain invisible even within military intelligence networks, he revealed while studying Sarah's tattoo with growing certainty about her true identity and background. The conversation was interrupted when Sarah's device detected critical changes in the approaching threat's tactical configuration and electronic warfare capabilities. "General, the contacts are entering attack formation," she announced while manipulating the holographic interface to display real-time threat analysis. "Their electronic jamming systems are preparing to disable our defensive installations permanently within the next 12 minutes. Major Williams examined the tactical data with professional alarm, recognizing that conventional defensive procedures would prove completely inadequate against the sophisticated attack patterns that Sarah's device had detected and analyzed. "Ma'am, those attack vectors are designed to exploit specific vulnerabilities in our base defense systems," he reported with obvious concern. "They've obviously conducted extensive intelligence gathering about our tactical capabilities and strategic limitations." Sarah turned to face General Hawkins with quiet authority that reflected years of experience making critical decisions under extreme pressure. "General, Phantom Wing pilots were trained specifically for situations like this," she said while her device continued displaying increasingly urgent tactical warnings. "We were designed to operate technology that could counter threats operating beyond conventional aerospace limitations and standard military response capabilities." Colonel Patterson confirmed Sarah's explanation while struggling with the implications of classified information that he had assumed would remain buried forever. Phantom Wing pilots underwent psychological and technical training that exceeded anything available through conventional military programs, he revealed with obvious reluctance about discussing classified operations. They were selected for their ability to make independent tactical decisions when facing threats that conventional military doctrine couldn't address effectively. The crisis was escalating beyond conventional response capabilities while they debated Sarah's qualifications and background, but her mysterious device provided the only viable intelligence about threats that had overwhelmed their standard military surveillance and tactical analysis systems. 8 years earlier, First Lieutenant Sarah Chun had been 23 years old and the youngest pilot ever selected for Phantom Wing's highly classified experimental program. The selection process had been conducted in complete secrecy, with candidates identified through psychological profiles and aptitude tests that measured capabilities beyond conventional military training parameters. Out of over 5,000 highly qualified pilots from across all military branches, only 7 exceptional individuals were chosen for training that pushed the boundaries of human performance and technological integration. Phantom Wing operated from a facility that officially didn't exist, hidden deep within the Nevada test range, where decades of classified research had developed aerospace technology that remained decades ahead of publicly acknowledged capabilities. The program was designed to identify pilots who could interface directly with experimental aircraft systems that required unprecedented levels of cognitive processing speed and multidimensional tactical thinking under extreme psychological pressure. Sarah had demonstrated extraordinary aptitude for operating technology that blurred the lines between conventional aerospace engineering and theoretical physics applications. The experimental aircraft she learned to pilot incorporated propulsion systems, navigation computers, and weapons platforms that operated according to principles that challenged fundamental assumptions about the limitations of human-controlled flight operations. Her training involved psychological conditioning that prepared pilots for engaging threats that operated beyond conventional tactical parameters. The selection criteria for Phantom Wing went far beyond traditional piloting skills and technical knowledge, focusing instead on psychological profiles that identified individuals capable of making independent moral decisions when facing impossible ethical dilemmas without direct supervision or clear guidance from command authorities. The program recognized that future conflicts would require pilots who could operate autonomously in hostile environments where communication with headquarters was impossible and standard tactical doctrines proved inadequate during a highly classified test mission over restricted airspace above the Pacific Ocean. Sarah's 3-person team encountered a catastrophic equipment failure that created an impossible choice between mission completion and pilot survival. Her wingman, Captain Rebecca Torres, a brilliant pilot from Texas with a young family, lost complete control of her experimental aircraft during a high-speed maneuver designed to test the limits of both human endurance and technological capability. The command radio crackled with explicit orders from General Morrison himself, transmitted through encrypted channels from a secure facility hundreds of miles away. Phantom 7 maintained mission parameters and continued to primary objective. Came the crystal-clear directive that left no room for interpretation or debate. Do not deviate from assigned flight plan under any circumstances. Mission completion takes absolute priority over all other considerations. But Sarah's advanced instrumentation revealed tactical information that ground control couldn't access from their distant monitoring station. Torres's aircraft wasn't completely lost. There existed a narrow window of opportunity, perhaps 45 seconds at most, where a skilled pilot using experimental technology could execute a theoretical recovery procedure that existed only in classified research documents that most pilots had never been authorized to access. Sarah faced an impossible decision that would define not only her military career but her fundamental understanding of the relationship between duty and morality. Under extreme pressure, the experimental mission they were conducting would provide critical data for developing defensive capabilities against threats that conventional military technology couldn't address effectively. The information they were gathering could potentially save thousands of lives in future conflicts by advancing aerospace technology beyond current limitations. However, Torres was spiraling toward a populated coastal area where her experimental aircraft would cause massive civilian casualties if she couldn't regain control within the next 60 seconds. The recovery procedure Sarah could attempt had never been tested under real combat conditions and carried significant risk of creating an even worse catastrophe if executed incorrectly or at the wrong moment. She made her choice without hesitation. directly disobeying explicit orders from the highest levels of military command, while fully understanding the career-ending consequences of prioritizing pilot survival over mission objectives. Sarah broke formation and executed the theoretical recovery maneuver using experimental technology that operated according to principles that challenged conventional understanding of aerospace engineering and physics applications. The recovery procedure required precise coordination between multiple experimental systems while operating at velocities and altitudes that pushed both human and technological capabilities beyond previously tested limitations. Sarah managed to create specific electromagnetic field interactions that allowed Torres to regain partial control of her damaged aircraft, enabling both pilots to return safely to their classified base facility. Both pilots survived the mission, but Sarah's decision to prioritize human life over experimental data collection had catastrophic consequences for the entire Phantom Wing program. Her actions had exposed classified technology to potential enemy observation satellites while compromising experimental procedures that had required years of development and testing under maximum security protocols. The political ramifications were swift and absolutely devastating for everyone involved in the program. Defense contractors who had invested billions of dollars in developing the experimental technology demanded accountability for security breaches that threatened their competitive advantages in classified aerospace markets. Congressional oversight committees launched investigations into programs that operated beyond their knowledge and budgetary authority. Within 72 hours of the failed mission, Phantom Wing was officially disbanded and all records were immediately sealed under national security provisions that prevented any discussion of the program or its operations. All personnel were scattered to different assignments across the globe, their specialized training and experience effectively buried under classification levels that exceeded standard military security protocols. Sarah wasn't court-martialed because her actions had ultimately saved an American pilot's life, but she was quietly transferred to administrative duties at a remote facility, where her pilot certification was permanently revoked without possibility of appeal or review. The official reason listed in her personnel file was failure to follow direct orders under simulated combat conditions, though the real reason involved political calculations about pilots who demonstrated independent moral thinking in situations where absolute obedience was considered more valuable than ethical decision-making. The distinctive metallic tattoo was the only memento she was allowed to keep from her time with Phantom Wing, a permanent reminder of both what she had accomplished and what she had sacrificed to save a fellow pilot's life, without waiting for official authorization or permission from any commanding officer. Sarah walked calmly toward the restricted access section of the operations center where the most sophisticated computer terminals were located. Her mysterious device interfaced wirelessly with the base's tactical systems, bypassing multiple layers of security protocols that should have prevented unauthorized access by civilian personnel. The main display screens throughout the facility suddenly came alive with data streams and technical readouts that exceeded anything the assembled officers had seen during their military careers. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. General Hawkins watched in amazement as Sarah's fingers moved across the advanced control interfaces with surgical precision, accessing classified systems and tactical databases that required clearance levels above her own authorization. Miss Chun, those systems require biometric authentication and security codes that are only available to personnel with above top-secret clearances, she observed while studying the complex data streams appearing on every screen in the operations center. Sarah's device had established complete integration with Falcon Ridge's tactical computer network, creating a comprehensive real-time analysis of the approaching threats that revealed technical specifications and vulnerability assessments. that conventional military sensors had been unable to detect or analyze. The holographic displays showed detailed schematics of the unidentified contacts, including their propulsion systems, defensive capabilities, and electronic warfare technologies that operated according to principles beyond current aerospace engineering. Understanding. Major Thompson stared at the tactical readouts, with professional fascination mixed with growing concern about the implications of technology that exceeded their defensive capabilities. Those specifications indicate propulsion systems that violate basic principles of physics as we understand them, he reported to General Hawkins, while examining engineering schematics that challenged fundamental assumptions about aerospace limitations. But the vulnerability analysis suggests specific countermeasures that could neutralize their technological advantages. The integrated tactical display revealed that the unidentified contacts were not merely conducting surveillance operations, but were actively preparing to disable critical military installations throughout the western United States using coordinated electromagnetic pulse attacks that would cripple defensive systems permanently. Sarah's analysis showed that conventional military responses would prove completely inadequate for preventing catastrophic damage to strategic facilities and communication networks. Colonel Williams demanded immediate explanations about how civilian personnel had gained access to tactical systems that exceeded the authorization levels of senior military officers. Ms. Chun, your access in classified databases and control systems that require years of specialized training and maximum security clearances, he insisted while pointing to the sophisticated technical displays. How is it possible that administrative support staff possesses knowledge about systems that most military personnel have never encountered? Sarah continued working with intense focus while explaining her capabilities through demonstrated expertise rather than verbal explanations that the assembled officers might find difficult to believe. Her device coordinated with multiple satellite networks and intelligence databases, creating a comprehensive tactical picture that revealed the true scope and sophistication of the threats they were facing while identifying specific vulnerabilities that could be exploited using precisely targeted countermeasures. The holographic interface displayed real-time tactical recommendations that required immediate implementation to prevent the approaching contacts from completing their mission objectives. Sarah's analysis indicated that conventional fighter aircraft would prove insufficient for engaging threats that operated beyond standard aerospace limitations, but suggested alternative approaches using technology and tactics that exceeded conventional military doctrine and training parameters. Captain Rodriguez examined the countermeasure proposals with growing amazement at their sophistication and precision, recognizing tactical innovations that went far beyond anything he had encountered during his extensive military career. Ma'am, these recommendations involve coordination between multiple advanced systems using protocols that don't exist in any standard military manual, he reported while studying the complex operational procedures that Sarah's device had generated. General Hawkins realized that conventional military thinking would prove inadequate for addressing threats that challenged fundamental assumptions about aerospace technology and strategic defense capabilities. Ms. Chun, your analysis suggests tactical approaches that exceed our current training and equipment capabilities, she observed while reviewing the sophisticated countermeasure recommendations displayed throughout the operations center. Sarah's device suddenly detected critical changes in the approaching threat's electromagnetic signatures, indicating that their attack systems were entering final preparation phases for disabling military installations across multiple states simultaneously. General, they're beginning their assault sequence, she announced while manipulating the holographic interface to display increasingly urgent tactical warnings. Conventional defensive systems will be completely neutralized within the next 8 minutes unless we implement immediate countermeasures. The crisis had escalated beyond conventional response capabilities while they debated authorization protocols and security clearances. But Sarah's technological integration provided the only viable solution for preventing catastrophic damage to critical military infrastructure. Her tactical analysis revealed that the approaching threats could be neutralized using precisely coordinated electromagnetic countermeasures that required technology and expertise that exceeded standard military capabilities. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes attempted to contact higher command authorities for guidance about implementing unconventional tactical solutions proposed by civilian personnel, but discovered that communication systems remained compromised by sophisticated jamming that prevented coordination with regional defense networks. General, we're still isolated from command structure, just when we need strategic guidance about procedures that exceed our standard operational authority, he reported with obvious frustration. Major Williams studied the tactical recommendations with professional recognition of their technical sophistication and strategic validity, despite his continuing confusion about how administrative support staff had developed expertise that exceeded conventional military training. Ma'am, these countermeasures could neutralize the approaching threats, but they require coordination between systems and personnel that operate beyond our current authorization protocols, he acknowledged while examining the complex operational requirements. Sarah looked directly at General Hawkins with quiet authority that reflected years of experience, making critical decisions under extreme pressure when conventional procedures proved inadequate for addressing unprecedented threats. General, I can implement these countermeasures immediately, but I'll need direct access to the base's primary tactical control systems and authorization to override standard operational protocols, she said while her device continued displaying increasingly urgent warnings about the approaching electromagnetic assault. General Hawkins faced the most critical decision of her military career as she weighed the unprecedented request from a civilian secretary against the growing threat that conventional military procedures had proven unable to address effectively. The tactical displays showed the unidentified contacts entering their final attack phase with electromagnetic pulse weapons systems charging to full power in preparation for simultaneously disabling military installations across the entire western United States defense network. Ms. Chun, what you're requesting exceeds every security protocol and operational procedure that governs military command authority, General Hawkins said while studying the increasingly urgent tactical warnings displayed throughout the operations center. Granting civilian personnel direct access to primary tactical control systems violates fundamental principles of military security and command structure that have protected our strategic capabilities for decades. Sarah's device detected critical changes in the electromagnetic signatures of the approaching threats, indicating that their attack sequence had entered the final 60-second countdown phase that would culminate in coordinated strikes against communication networks, power grids, and defensive systems throughout multiple states. General, conventional authorization procedures assume conventional threats operating within predictable parameters, she replied while manipulating the holographic interface to display real-time countdown timers. These contacts will complete their mission objectives in 53 seconds, unless we implement immediate countermeasures that exceed standard operational protocols. Colonel Patterson stepped forward with obvious reluctance about revealing classified information that he had kept secret for nearly a decade, but the developing crisis left him no alternative to breaking security protocols that protected programs officially buried under maximum classification levels. General Hawkins, Phantom Wing personnel were specifically trained for situations that exceeded conventional military response capabilities, he explained while struggling with clearance restrictions that prohibited discussion of classified operations. Their psychological conditioning and technical training prepared them for making independent, tactical decisions when standard procedures proved inadequate for protecting strategic installations. Major Thompson objected to granting unprecedented tactical authority to personnel whose qualifications remained unverified through official military channels and documentation systems that governed command authorization protocols. General, we're considering giving primary system access to someone whose military background can't be confirmed through standard personnel databases, he argued while pointing to security concerns that exceeded typical operational risk assessments. Even if Ms. Chun possesses relevant technical knowledge, authorizing civilian control of tactical systems establishes dangerous precedents that could compromise future operational security. The countdown timer displayed by Sarah's device reached 45 seconds while the assembled officers debated authorization protocols and security, considerations that seemed increasingly irrelevant as the electromagnetic assault approached its implementation phase. The tactical analysis showed that conventional defensive systems would be completely neutralized within seconds of the coordinated attack, leaving critical military installations vulnerable to secondary assault phases. That could cripple American strategic defense capabilities permanently. General, Hawkins realized that adherence to standard security protocols would result in catastrophic failure to protect strategic installations and personnel under her command, while authorizing unconventional responses carried political and career risks. That could destroy her military reputation, regardless of operational outcomes. Colonel Patterson, if Phantom Wing training prepared personnel for situations like this, what specific capabilities should we expect from someone with that background? She demanded while studying Sarah's continued manipulation of advanced tactical systems. Patterson explained that Phantom Wing pilots had undergone psychological conditioning that prepared them for operating independently when communication with command authorities was impossible, and conventional tactical doctrines proved inadequate for addressing unprecedented threats. Their training emphasized adaptability and innovation under extreme pressure, he revealed while watching Sarah coordinate multiple technical systems with obvious expertise. They were selected specifically for their ability to develop tactical solutions that exceeded standard military procedures when protecting strategic assets required unconventional approaches. Captain Rodriguez monitored the technical readouts while Sarah's device established deeper integration with Falcon Ridge's tactical computer networks, creating comprehensive system coordination that exceeded anything he had witnessed during his extensive military career. General, she's achieving real-time integration between surveillance systems, defensive networks, and communication protocols that typically require teams of specialists several hours to coordinate properly, he reported with obvious amazement at the sophisticated technical capabilities being demonstrated. Sarah's holographic interface displayed detailed electromagnetic countermeasure procedures that required precise timing and coordination between multiple advanced systems, operating according to principles that challenged conventional understanding of electronic warfare capabilities and defensive technologies. The countdown timer showed 37 seconds remaining before the approaching threats would implement their coordinated assault on critical military infrastructure throughout the Western Defense Network. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes attempted one final communication with regional command authorities, but discovered that electromagnetic interference had intensified to levels that prevented any coordination with external military installations or strategic planning centers. General, were completely isolated from command structure and regional defense networks, he reported with obvious frustration about their inability to coordinate responses with other military installations facing similar threats. Whatever decision we make will be implemented without external guidance or support from higher authorities. Major Williams studied the countermeasure proposals with growing recognition of their technical sophistication and strategic validity. Despite his continuing concerns about authorizing unprecedented tactical procedures that exceeded standard military operational protocols. Ma'am, these electromagnetic countermeasures could neutralize the approaching threats, but they require system integration and coordination that operates beyond our current training and authorization levels. He acknowledged while examining the complex technical requirements displayed throughout the operations center. General Hawkins looked directly at Sarah, while weighing the catastrophic consequences of both conventional and unconventional response. Options that would determine the survival of critical military installations under her protection. Miss Chun, if I authorize access to primary tactical control systems, what specific outcomes can you guarantee regarding the neutralization of these threats? She demanded while studying the continuing countdown that showed 28 seconds remaining before the electromagnetic assault would commence. Sarah met General Hawkins' gaze with quiet confidence that reflected years of experience making critical decisions under extreme pressure when conventional procedures proved inadequate for protecting strategic assets and personnel. General, I can neutralize these threats completely using electromagnetic countermeasures that will disable their attack capabilities while preserving our defensive systems, she replied while her device continued displaying increasingly sophisticated tactical coordination requirements. However, implementing these countermeasures will require authorization that exceeds standard operational protocols and security clearances that govern civilian access to classified tactical systems. The tactical display showed 18 seconds remaining before the coordinated electromagnetic assault would begin, while General Hawkins faced the ultimate command decision about authorizing unprecedented tactical procedures that could either save critical military installations or compromise fundamental security protocols that protected strategic defense capabilities from unauthorized access and potential exploitation by hostile intelligence services. General Hawkins made the decision that would either save American strategic defense capabilities or end her military career in disgrace. Miss Chun, you have full authorization to access primary tactical control systems and implement whatever countermeasures are necessary to neutralize these threats, she announced while entering her command authorization codes into the secure terminal that governed access to the base's most classified operational systems. All personnel will provide complete cooperation and technical support for procedures that exceed standard operational protocols. Sarah moved with fluid precision toward the master tactical control station, her fingers dancing across interfaces that required years of specialized training to operate safely under normal circumstances. The countdown timer showed 14 seconds remaining as she established direct neural interface with the base's integrated defense network, her mysterious device creating connections between biological and technological systems that shouldn't have been possible according to conventional understanding of human-computer interaction capabilities. The operations center filled with an electromagnetic as Sarah initiated countermeasures that drew power from multiple base systems simultaneously, creating energy patterns that exceeded normal operational parameters, while remaining within safe limits for critical infrastructure and personnel safety. Her tactical display showed the approaching threats suddenly encountering electromagnetic interference that disrupted their attack systems and navigation computers with surgical precision that avoided collateral damage to civilian aircraft or communication networks. Major Thompson watched in amazement as the unidentified contacts lost formation and began experiencing systematic equipment failures that forced them to abort their coordinated assault on military installations throughout the western United States. General, their electromagnetic pulse weapons are going offline one by one, he reported while studying tactical readouts that showed the sophisticated attack systems being neutralized through countermeasures that exceeded anything in standard military doctrine. Whatever Miss Chun is doing, it's working with precision that suggests intimate knowledge of their technology and vulnerabilities. The tactical displays showed the approaching threats attempting to implement backup attack protocols, but Sarah's countermeasures adapted instantly to counter each new strategy they employed. creating a technological chess match that demonstrated capabilities far beyond conventional electronic warfare systems and standard defensive procedures. Her neural interface allowed real-time tactical decision-making that exceeded human cognitive processing speeds while maintaining strategic coordination that protected friendly aircraft and civilian infrastructure from electromagnetic interference. Colonel Williams observed the systematic neutralization of threats that had overwhelmed conventional military response capabilities just minutes earlier. Recognizing tactical expertise that exceeded anything he had encountered during his extensive career in advanced aerospace operations and electronic warfare systems. "Ma'am, she's not just defending against their attacks," he reported with obvious professional admiration. "She's actually turning their own electromagnetic weapons against their propulsion systems and navigation computers, using their advanced technology as a vulnerability rather than an advantage." Sarah's countermeasures created cascading system failures throughout the attacking formation, forcing the unidentified contacts to abandon their assault and withdraw from restricted airspace while their advanced technology experienced comprehensive electromagnetic disruption that prevented further hostile operations. The threat that had seemed insurmountable using conventional military procedures was systematically neutralized through tactical innovations that exceeded standard electronic warfare doctrine and training parameters. Captain Rodriguez monitored communication systems as they came back online following the neutralization of electromagnetic jamming that had isolated Falcon Ridge from regional defense networks and command authorities. "General, we're receiving confirmation that similar threats at installations throughout the western United States have also been neutralized simultaneously," he reported while studying incoming tactical reports. Whatever countermeasures Miss Shun implemented, they coordinated defensive responses across multiple military facilities that were facing identical attacks. The operations center erupted in spontaneous applause as the assembled officers recognized that Sarah had single-handedly prevented catastrophic damage to critical military infrastructure, while demonstrating capabilities that exceeded their collective training and experience. General Hawkins approached Sarah with obvious respect and professional admiration for tactical expertise that had saved strategic installations and personnel throughout multiple states. "Miss Chun, your actions today prevented what could have been the most devastating attack on American military infrastructure since Pearl Harbor," General Hawkins said while studying the tactical aftermath displayed on screens throughout the operations center. "I don't fully understand the technology or training that enabled you to neutralize threats that overwhelmed our conventional defensive capabilities, but I recognize extraordinary service when I witness it." Sarah deactivated her neural interface and stepped back from the master tactical control station, her mysterious device powering down as the immediate crisis passed and normal operational procedures could be restored throughout the base. "General, Phantom Wing training prepared us for exactly this type of situation," she explained while the assembled officers struggled to comprehend tactical capabilities that exceeded conventional military understanding. "We were designed to protect strategic assets when conventional procedures proved inadequate for addressing unprecedented threats." Colonel Patterson approached Sarah with obvious emotion, recognizing that classified programs he had helped develop years earlier had ultimately fulfilled their strategic purpose despite political decisions that had officially terminated their operations. The politicians who shut down Phantom Wing claimed that independent tactical thinking was too dangerous for modern military operations, he said while studying Sarah's distinctive tattoo with new understanding. "Today you proved that moral courage and technical innovation are exactly what we need when conventional thinking fails to protect American strategic interests." Major Williams requested immediate access to after-action reports and technical analysis of the countermeasures that Sarah had implemented, recognizing that her tactical innovations could revolutionize electronic warfare doctrine and defensive capabilities for future threats. Miss Chun, the techniques you demonstrated today exceed anything in our current training curricula. He observed while examining tactical readouts that showed the sophisticated electromagnetic countermeasures. Would you be willing to share your knowledge with our tactical development programs and advanced training initiatives? Sarah smiled quietly while considering the implications of revealing capabilities that had remained hidden for nearly 8 years of administrative service. At facilities where her true qualifications went unrecognized and unappreciated. Major, I've been sharing my knowledge since the day I arrived at Falcon Ridge, she replied while gesturing toward officers who had dismissed her insights and suggestions for years. You just weren't ready to recognize that valuable expertise. Doesn't always come with official credentials and conventional career paths. General Hawkins realized that Sarah represented capabilities that the military couldn't afford to waste in administrative positions, regardless of political decisions, that had officially terminated programs like Phantom Wing years earlier. Miss Chun, I'm recommending your immediate reinstatement to active pilot status with authorization to develop tactical training programs based on your demonstrated expertise, she announced while preparing official documentation that would restore Sarah's military career and professional recognition. The aftermath of the crisis revealed that similar attacks had been attempted simultaneously at strategic installations throughout North America and Europe. But only facilities with former Phantom Wing personnel had successfully neutralized the threats, using unconventional countermeasures that exceeded standard military response capabilities. Sarah's actions had not only saved Falcon Ridge but had coordinated defensive responses that protected critical infrastructure across multiple nations and military alliances. Within hours, secure communication channels carried requests from military leaders throughout the Western world seeking consultation with personnel who possessed capabilities for addressing threats that operated beyond conventional aerospace limitations and standard tactical doctrine. Sarah's demonstration had proven that programs like Phantom Wing represented essential strategic capabilities that conventional military thinking had failed to recognize and appreciate. The political officials who had terminated Phantom Wing 8 years earlier suddenly found themselves requesting immediate reinstatement of programs they had dismissed as unnecessary and dangerous to military discipline and command authority. 3 months after the crisis at Falcon Ridge, Sarah Chun stood before a congressional committee in a secure briefing room beneath the Pentagon, facing the same political officials who had terminated Phantom Wing 8 years earlier. The emergency session had been convened after intelligence agencies discovered that the coordinated electromagnetic assault represented only the initial phase of a comprehensive strategy designed to systematically disable Western military capabilities before implementing secondary attacks that could have crippled global defense networks permanently. Senator Margaret Winters, the chairwoman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, reviewed classified reports that detailed how former Phantom Wing personnel at 17 different military installations had simultaneously neutralized identical threats using tactical innovations that exceeded conventional military doctrine and training parameters. Miss Chun, our intelligence analysis indicates that without your coordinated response, we would have faced the most devastating attack on American strategic infrastructure in modern history. She acknowledged while studying after-action reports that painted a sobering picture of avoided catastrophe. The congressional briefing revealed that the attacking forces had possessed technological capabilities that remained decades ahead of publicly acknowledged aerospace engineering, suggesting either advanced foreign military development or collaboration with entities that operated beyond conventional understanding of technological limitations. Sarah's countermeasures had not only neutralized the immediate threats, but had also provided intelligence agencies with comprehensive technical data about propulsion systems, electronic warfare capabilities, and defensive technologies that challenged fundamental assumptions about aerospace science and physics applications. General Morrison, The same officer who had originally ordered the termination of Phantom Wing sat uncomfortably at the witness table while reviewing documentation that proved the program's strategic value and necessity for protecting critical military infrastructure. Senator Winters, I must acknowledge that my previous assessment of Phantom Wing's operational requirements was based on incomplete understanding of potential threats that exceeded conventional tactical parameters, he admitted while struggling with the political implications of reversing decisions that had cost American strategic capabilities for nearly a decade. Congressman David Rodriguez, a member of the House Armed Services Committee, demanded detailed explanations about how classified programs had operated beyond congressional oversight and budgetary authority while developing capabilities that proved essential for national security during unprecedented crisis situations. Ms. Chun, Phantom Wing apparently operated with technologies and training procedures that exceeded anything documented in official military budgets or strategic planning documents, he observed while reviewing financial records that revealed extensive classified expenditures for programs that officially didn't exist. Sarah explained that Phantom Wing had been designed to address threats that conventional military thinking couldn't anticipate or counter effectively, requiring psychological conditioning and technical training that prepared personnel for operating independently when standard procedures proved inadequate for protecting strategic assets. Congressman Rodriguez, conventional military doctrine assumes that future conflicts will resemble historical patterns and technological limitations, she said while referencing tactical analysis that demonstrated the inadequacy of traditional approaches. Phantom Wing recognized that unprecedented threats require unprecedented responses that exceed standard operational protocols and authorization procedures. The committee examined classified footage from security cameras at multiple military installations, showing former Phantom Wing personnel implementing countermeasures that demonstrated capabilities far beyond anything achieved through conventional military training and education programs. Senator Patricia Hayes, a former Air Force officer herself, recognized tactical expertise that exceeded her own military experience and professional understanding of aerospace operations and electronic warfare systems. Ms. Chun, the technical capabilities you demonstrated suggest training and conditioning that goes beyond anything documented in standard military curricula, Senator Hayes observed while studying video evidence that showed Sarah coordinating multiple advanced systems with precision that seemed to exceed normal human cognitive processing capabilities. What specific procedures and technologies were involved in Phantom Wing training that enabled such extraordinary performance under extreme pressure situations? Sarah's testimony revealed that Phantom Wing training had incorporated experimental psychological conditioning techniques and neural interface technologies that enhanced human cognitive processing speeds while maintaining ethical decision-making capabilities under extreme stress and time pressure. The program had recognized that future conflicts would require pilots who could process information and implement tactical solutions faster than conventional human reaction times while preserving moral judgment that prevented collateral damage and strategic miscalculations. The congressional investigation uncovered evidence that defense contractors had pressured political officials to terminate Phantom Wing because its personnel demonstrated capabilities that threatened established business models and procurement contracts for conventional military equipment and training programs. Companies that had invested billions of dollars in traditional aerospace technology viewed Phantom Wing's innovations as competitive threats that could obsolete existing weapon systems and tactical doctrines that generated substantial profits. Through government contracts and international sales, Congressman Michael Thompson, the ranking minority member of the Intelligence Committee, demanded accountability from defense contractors who had prioritized corporate profits over national security requirements while lobbying for the termination of programs that proved essential for protecting American strategic interests. The evidence suggests that financial considerations influenced strategic decisions about military capabilities that proved critical for defending against unprecedented threats, he stated while reviewing lobbying records and campaign contribution patterns that revealed extensive corporate influence on military policy decisions. Sarah's reinstatement to active duty had triggered similar reviews of other terminated programs and reassignments that had scattered highly trained personnel across routine administrative positions where their specialized capabilities remained unrecognized and underutilized. Intelligence agencies discovered that dozens of former special operations personnel with extraordinary qualifications were working as maintenance technicians, supply clerks, and administrative assistants at military installations throughout the world. The systematic review revealed a pattern of political decisions that had prioritized conventional military thinking and corporate interests over innovative approaches to strategic defense and tactical training that could address evolving threats more effectively than established procedures and technologies. Senator Winters announced immediate legislation to restore funding for experimental military programs and protect specialized personnel from political interference that compromised national security capabilities. General Patricia Hawkins, who had authorized Sarah's tactical response during the crisis at Falcon Ridge, testified about the critical importance of maintaining programs that developed unconventional capabilities for addressing threats that exceeded standard military response parameters. Senators, conventional military thinking assumes that future conflicts will resemble historical patterns, she explained while presenting tactical analysis that demonstrated evolving threat characteristics. Phantom Wing represented recognition that innovative enemies require innovative responses that exceed traditional approaches to strategic defense and tactical operations. The committee's final recommendations included immediate restoration of Phantom Wing with expanded funding and congressional protection from corporate lobbying and political interference that could compromise its operational effectiveness. Sarah was promoted to colonel and appointed as the program's new director with authority to recruit and train personnel according to selection criteria that prioritize psychological resilience and technical innovation over conventional military credentials and career advancement patterns. Intelligence agencies began systematic identification of personnel whose qualifications exceeded their current assignments, recognizing that valuable expertise often remained hidden within routine administrative and support positions where specialized capabilities went unrecognized by supervisors who focused on conventional performance metrics rather than potential contributions to strategic operations and tactical innovation. The crisis had demonstrated that America's most valuable military assets weren't always the most expensive weapon systems or conventional combat units, but rather the individuals who possessed capabilities that exceeded standard training parameters and authorization protocols, while maintaining moral judgment that protected strategic interests without compromising ethical principles or civilian safety during complex operations. Within 6 months, similar review processes were implemented throughout NATO countries and allied nations, as military leaders recognized that conventional approaches to personnel management and strategic planning had systematically overlooked capabilities that proved essential for addressing evolving threats that operated beyond traditional tactical parameters and established defense doctrines. 2 years after the congressional hearings that restored Phantom Wing, Colonel Sarah Chun stood in the advanced training facility that had been constructed deep within the Colorado mountains, watching a new generation of candidates undergo selection. Procedures that would identify individuals capable of operating beyond conventional military limitations. The facility represented everything that Phantom Wing had originally envisioned, combining cutting-edge technology with psychological conditioning programs that prepared personnel for situations that exceeded standard tactical doctrine and operational procedures. The selection process had been revolutionized based on lessons learned from the systematic exclusion of qualified personnel who possessed exceptional capabilities but didn't fit conventional military career patterns and promotion criteria. Candidates were evaluated not only for technical aptitude and physical conditioning, but also for psychological resilience, moral judgment under extreme pressure, and ability to innovate tactical solutions when standard procedures proved inadequate for protecting strategic assets and civilian populations. Lieutenant Maria Santos, a young pilot from California whose unconventional background included civilian aerospace engineering and humanitarian relief operations, demonstrated exactly the type of multidisciplinary thinking that Phantom Wing sought to develop and refine through specialized training programs. Her selection had been based on psychological profiles that identified individuals capable of making independent ethical decisions while operating advanced technology that required unprecedented levels of cognitive processing and tactical coordination under extreme stress conditions. Captain James Mitchell, a former maintenance technician who had been working routine assignments at overseas installations, despite possessing advanced degrees in theoretical physics and aeronautical engineering, represented the type of overlooked talent that systematic reviews had identified throughout military installations worldwide. His technical knowledge exceeded that of many officers with conventional pilot training, but his unconventional career path had prevented recognition of capabilities that proved essential for operating experimental systems and developing innovative tactical approaches. The new Phantom Wing facility incorporated neural interface training systems that allowed personnel to develop direct cognitive connections with advanced computer networks and tactical coordination systems, enhancing human decision-making capabilities, while preserving ethical judgment and strategic thinking that distinguished exceptional military leaders from conventional personnel who followed standard procedures without adaptation to evolving circumstances and unprecedented challenges. Sarah observed the training exercises with professional satisfaction, recognizing that the current candidates possessed psychological profiles and technical capabilities that exceeded even the original Phantom Wing selection criteria from a decade earlier. The program had evolved beyond simple pilot training to encompass comprehensive strategic thinking and tactical innovation that prepared personnel for leadership roles in situations that conventional military education couldn't anticipate or address effectively through established procedures and doctrines. The electromagnetic assault that had nearly crippled American strategic defense capabilities had proven to be only the beginning of a new era of conflicts that required capabilities beyond conventional military thinking and traditional approaches to tactical training and strategic planning. Intelligence agencies had identified similar threats developing throughout the world, suggesting coordinated efforts to systematically test and potentially overwhelm Western defense networks through technological capabilities that exceeded publicly acknowledged aerospace engineering and electronic warfare systems. Master Sergeant Robert Thompson, the senior training instructor who had been recruited from his previous assignment managing supply logistics at a remote facility in Alaska, demonstrated how valuable expertise often remained hidden within routine. Administrative and support positions were specialized. Knowledge went unrecognized by supervisors focused on conventional performance metrics, rather than potential contributions to strategic operations and tactical innovation programs. The psychological conditioning component of Phantom Wing training had been expanded to address the emotional and ethical challenges that personnel faced when operating technology that could influence global strategic balance and political stability. Through individual tactical decisions made under extreme time pressure, without direct supervision or clear guidance from traditional command authorities and established military hierarchies. Lieutenant Colonel David Rodriguez, Sarah's deputy director who had previously worked as a communications technician despite possessing advanced training in quantum computing and electromagnetic field theory, coordinated the technical systems. that allowed candidates to interface directly with experimental aircraft and defensive technologies that operated according to principles that challenged conventional understanding of physics applications and aerospace engineering limitations. The training facility itself represented a technological marvel that combined conventional military infrastructure with experimental systems that remained classified at levels exceeding standard military security protocols and congressional oversight procedures. Underground laboratories contained simulation environments that replicated potential conflict scenarios involving threats that operated beyond conventional tactical parameters and established defense doctrines, allowing personnel to develop tactical responses through repeated exposure to situations that exceeded normal training parameters. Captain Rebecca Martinez, a former intelligence analyst who had been assigned to routine data processing despite her expertise in pattern recognition and strategic forecasting, now led the psychological evaluation programs that identified candidates with the mental resilience and ethical framework necessary for making independent moral decisions when protecting strategic assets. Required actions that exceeded conventional military authority and established operational procedures. The ripple effects of Phantom Wings restoration extended far beyond American military capabilities, as Allied nations implemented similar programs for identifying and developing personnel who possessed capabilities that exceeded conventional training parameters and standard career advancement patterns. NATO countries established cooperative training exchanges that allowed exceptional individuals to develop skills through international collaboration while maintaining security protocols that protected classified technologies and tactical innovations from potential compromise or exploitation. Major Kevin Hayes, who had spent 6 years working as a base maintenance supervisor, despite holding advanced degrees in aerospace engineering and strategic studies, now directed the technical development programs that created new interface technologies and tactical coordination systems based on lessons learned from the electromagnetic assault and subsequent defensive innovations that had proven essential for protecting critical infrastructure and strategic installations. The success of Phantom Wings restoration had triggered comprehensive reviews of military personnel management systems throughout the Western world, revealing thousands of individuals whose qualifications exceeded their current assignments while their specialized capabilities remained unrecognized by conventional promotion criteria and career development programs that prioritize traditional military experience over innovative thinking and technical expertise. Sarah's daily routine now involved reviewing candidate evaluations and training progress reports, while coordinating with intelligence agencies and allied military commands about evolving threats that required tactical responses beyond conventional military doctrine and established defense procedures. Her office overlooked the advanced simulation facilities where the next generation of Phantom Wing personnel developed capabilities that would protect strategic assets and civilian populations from threats that conventional military thinking couldn't anticipate or counter effectively. The broader implications of Phantom Wings work extended beyond military applications to include humanitarian operations and disaster response situations where conventional government capabilities proved inadequate for addressing complex emergencies that required rapid tactical adaptation and innovative resource coordination under extreme time pressure and resource limitations that exceeded normal operational parameters, and established emergency response protocols. Training scenarios now incorporated civilian protection requirements and international law considerations that prepared personnel for operating in complex political environments where tactical decisions carried diplomatic and strategic consequences that extended far beyond immediate military objectives and conventional mission parameters, requiring psychological conditioning that maintained ethical decision-making capabilities under extreme pressure, while preserving strategic thinking and moral judgment. The electromagnetic countermeasures that Sarah had developed during the crisis at Falcon Ridge had been refined and systematized into training protocols that allowed multiple personnel to coordinate defensive responses against threats that operated beyond conventional aerospace limitations and standard electronic warfare. Capabilities: creating redundant protective systems that could function independently if primary command structures were compromised or communication networks were disrupted during coordinated attacks. Colonel Patterson, now serving as Phantom Wing Senior Advisor and historical consultant, documented the lessons learned from the program's original termination and subsequent restoration, creating comprehensive records that would prevent future political interference with strategic capabilities. That proved essential for national security, regardless of conventional military thinking or corporate interests that prioritized established business models over innovative approaches to tactical training and strategic defense. 5 years later, Sarah received a call that changed everything again. A young woman named Lisa Park, working as a night janitor at a classified research facility in Nevada, had quietly solved a quantum encryption problem that had stumped the world's leading scientists for decades. Security cameras showed her writing complex equations on whiteboards during her cleaning shifts, equations that revealed breakthrough discoveries in theoretical physics that could revolutionize global communication and defense systems. Colonel Chun, the facility director, said urgently over the secure phone line, "We found notebooks hidden in her cleaning cart. The mathematical proofs inside could change everything we know about quantum mechanics and electromagnetic field manipulation. But officially, she's just a janitor with a high school education who cleans laboratories after hours." Sarah smiled, remembering her own journey from dismissed secretary to respected military leader. "I'll be there in 6 hours," she replied while reviewing Lisa's personnel file that showed a brilliant mind trapped in routine work, because no one had bothered to look beyond job titles and conventional credentials. The pattern continued worldwide. A security guard in London who secretly designed revolutionary aircraft engines during his night shifts. A cafeteria worker in Tokyo whose lunch break sketches contained solutions to advanced aerospace engineering problems. A parking lot attendant in Berlin who had quietly developed countermeasures for cyber warfare threats that exceeded anything created by government specialists and defense contractors. Sarah had learned that extraordinary people often hide in plain sight, waiting for someone to recognize their potential and give them the opportunity to prove that titles don't determine capability. Dedication does. The most powerful individuals aren't always the ones in corner offices or impressive uniforms. Sometimes they're the ones others never see coming. Your story isn't finished yet. Your potential is waiting to be discovered. If this story inspired you to look beyond appearances and recognize hidden potential in yourself and others, subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories about ordinary people who accomplished extraordinary things when given the chance to prove their worth.